Welcome to the 4th Annual H2O for HOAs event. My name is Lori Davies and I'm the Mayor of Laguna Niguel. It's my honor to help represent the 16 water agencies and cities across South Orange County that partner together every year on an HOA and water issues. To help walk you through the rest of the event, let me now turn the virtual mic to Kelly Jennings with the Molten Niguel Water District.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Jennings, Director of the Molten Niguel Water District. On behalf of Molten Niguel and all of our amazing partners, welcome to the 4th Annual H2O for HOAs event. We miss seeing you all in person, but still wanted to offer this educational event for our HOA community. So thank you for joining us. As Mayor Davies mentioned, more than a dozen water agencies and cities across South Orange County have partnered to bring you this virtual event this year. You'll hear from some of those agencies today, but I can't thank everyone enough for their partnership, hard work, and dedication to create such a great program. Today, you'll hear from a great lineup of speakers representing cities, water agencies, professional organizations, and nonprofits who will provide information to support HOAs. Whether you're an HOA board member, property manager, professional landscaper, or resident living in an HOA community, we hope you learn a lot today. Throughout the event, we encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A box. All of the speakers will be providing their contact information, so we also encourage you to reach out to them directly after the event as well. And if you have specific questions for your city or water district, please reach out to them. All of the event partners we have here with us today to answer questions live in the Q&A box, and we encourage you to share your comments, questions, and feedback with us. So let's get started. Our first speaker, Devin Slavin, is the Environmental Manager with the City of Lake Forest. He'll be sharing best practices to protect our local watershed by managing stormwater and urban runoff. Take it away, Devin.
Hello and welcome to the H2O for HOAs workshop. My name is Devin Slavin. I'm with the City of Lake Forest. I'm the Environmental Manager, but I'm presenting on behalf of the entire H2OC Stormwater Program, which is a collaborative effort of my city, Lake Forest, as well as the County of Orange and all of the other cities in South Orange County. And today I'm going to be talking to you about watershed protection. So the first slide that's depicted is just showing a fundamental concept for everyone to understand, and we try to educate those starting with this concept of this, what the difference is between the sewer and the storm drain system. This is a critical difference. The sewer is depicted on the upper portion of the picture, and that all of the wastewater that is generated in something like a household sewage would actually travel to a sewage treatment plant where it is treated, and it does eventually get discharged into the ocean. However, it's fully treated. Storm drain system is much different. The storm drain system is basically a collection system whose purpose is to preserve life and property. So the idea is you want to get the rainwater out of the city as quickly as possible. None of that is treated, so that discharges directly to our local creeks, our lakes, and then eventually down to the ocean. This is a depiction of what a typical urban environment would be like, and some of the potential sources of pollution. So in the lower right-hand corner, the orange circle is showing a parked car and some leaking oil. Moving on to the residential area, you see a hose that's been left on and potentially picking up pollutants and discharging down to the storm drain. Here you have some spilled solid waste and other materials, and then next we can see some careless concrete work with a discharge of cementitious materials that's getting into the sidewalk. And what happens to all of that? It ends up in the storm drain system and then makes its way down to our ocean and beaches. That is what we want to prevent. So a very helpful concept that we use is the watershed. a watershed is essentially a specific delineated land area that all drains to one spot. So if you could imagine a raindrop falling at a high elevation, like at the top of the mountain, that rain is going to fall by gravity and flow toward creeks and then to lakes and then eventually make its way down to what's called a receiving water. And that would ultimately, in our case, it would ultimately ends up in the ocean and all of the beaches. So if you consider that, it's basically based on topography and how that water flows downhill. And when you think about all of Orange County, every drop of water flows to at least one water body. So no matter where you stand, you are in one watershed or another. So here's a depiction of all of the watersheds in South Orange County. And we delineate these because it's a very useful tool to help us manage pollution prevention. So you can actually go on to OC Stormwater website and you see the link in the lower left-hand corner there. And you can see all of the different watersheds and also find your own watershed. Moving on, wanted to talk about some of the ways that we do manage these watersheds. So in South Orange County, we have the Water Quality Improvement Plan, otherwise known as the WQIP. And this is a very extensive plan that was put together collaboratively by, again, the County of Orange, as well as all of the municipalities in South Orange County. And we use that as our principal policy and guidance document to achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve. So without getting into the details, the big picture items are really looking at the priorities are depicted on the top. We have 3 priorities that we've designated. One is human pathogen health risk, the other is stream erosion, and the last would be the unnatural water balance. And then the goals and strategies that go along with that. For human pathogen health risk, we focus on human waste sources of control. So if we're looking at pathogens and potential harmful effects of that, we want to focus on true pathogens and the dangers to human health for that. Stream erosion, we focus on stream rehabilitation and stability of those streams and waterways. And then for unnatural water balance, we're focusing on dry weather runoff elimination. And then you can tell there are 2 areas that HOAs can actually help us achieve our goals and make a huge impact, and that's with the human pathogen health risk and unnatural water balance. So talking about runoff and the pollutants in runoff or from runoff, going back to the depiction of the common urban areas, when you do have runoff, the pollutants are generated from a lot of the activities that are commonplace throughout any urban area, and in particular residential areas or HOA areas. So here's some examples of some of the common pollutants that are found in runoff and the dangers of it getting into the storm drain system and traveling down to the ocean, where it does cause some significant environmental impacts. So let's talk about what you can do to help. The way that we tackle the issues is we manage that through implementation of best management practices, or we usually refer to them as BMPs. Best management practices, it's worth defining. They are practices, or they can be structural devices that help control, treat, or prevent pollution in the runoff. So we do have, within the Orange County, we have a stormwater program that covers a lot of different areas, and some of the areas might be directed at industrial activities or commercial activities. We do have a specific program that's developed for HOAs and common interest areas. The program goal of that is to increase understanding and implementation of BMPs to prevent pollutants from reaching waterways in the Pacific Ocean. It's a pretty straightforward goal. What may not be so straightforward, and the reason I wanted to talk about it a little bit, is how HOAs can help. So HOAs have the power to encourage change, and there's multiple ways that they can do that. One of the ways is enforcing rules and regulations, and not only you'll see through these presentations, not only do these best management practices impact pollution prevention, but they tie very closely together with water conservation. So that's the reason why you see enforcing rules and regulations that are water-wise. And then the implementation, as we've already discussed, of best management practices in common interest areas. The way that we use our management techniques is to implement BMPs specific to certain activities that generate pollutants. We've identified activities that have the potential to commonly generate pollutants that can impact the environment. So we start off with those activities, and here are some examples. And then we identify those activities and develop best management practices to coincide with those activities that either prevent or reduce the pollutants that could be generated from those activities. So the way that we developed methods to manage the activities and work toward pollution prevention is we've developed what are called BMP fact sheets. BMPs meaning best management practices, once again. These fact sheets start off by the specific activity, and then they provide the best management practices that correspond to those activities. And the fact sheets themselves are posted on the county's H2OC website, as well as each city's website. So they're easily accessible, and you can find them there. The fact sheets do include pollution prevention, BMPs, training, and some additional references. So here's an example of what a fact sheet looks like. It can look overwhelming at first, but I did want to point out that you will see that we've tried to break it down and make it easier to consume by placing some very specific boxes. You'll see minimum best management practices. Those are really the best answers to the test, if you will. If you don't have time for whatever reason to read through the details, please make sure you read the boxes. And also, it's important to understand the targeted constituents that those best management practices are targeted toward. For example, in this one, you have sediment, nutrients, bacteria, pesticides, etc. And then finally, the details in bold below actually describe the best management practices to be implemented. One of the resources, as we mentioned, is the countywide stormwater program H2OC website. And when you go to the website, there is a link for resources. And then when you see below, those resources are targeted or grouped into certain categories. These examples that are shown below are low impact development, pollution prevention for construction sites, pollution prevention for businesses, and there will be those same types for HOAs and common interest areas and residential areas. This slide is the common BMPs that are required for all the HOAs. I'm going to go through and discuss in detail some of the BMPs that kind of correspond to the BMP fact sheets, but we won't be able to hit all of them. So this is a summary slide of what the BMP fact sheets will cover. You can see in the bullet points. So For the ones that we don't go over in this presentation, please go ahead and reference their respective BMP fact sheets. Common BMPs for all HOAs. So here's a really big one. This ties into what we are talking about today, and what I'm going to discuss is more on the regulatory side and what is prohibited, but later on, the point of this collaborative effort is we want to talk about some resources and some potential grant funding that's available to assist you in moving forward and implementing some of these best management practices. So it's a good tie together. But for us, this is a huge issue that we really need everybody's collaboration with to help tackle, and that's over-irrigation. So the problem is that over-irrigation or irrigation runoff is a prohibited discharge. And that may not seem intuitive at first because a lot of times it's potable water that's irrigation. And that's getting into the storm drain, and you think, well, there's no pollutants in that, it's potable water, what's wrong with it? Well, the problem is it's a conveyance for pollutants. So if you think about what's happening in the picture that's depicted there, you can see quite a bit of water getting into the street, and there's various pollutants like oil, metals, sediment, etc., that get carried in that water that's flowing into the storm drain system, and that goes into the local environmental resources. And it may seem like a small amount here, but if everybody has the same type of issues and you multiply that by each city and then county-wide, the issues can be rather significant. So the solutions are what we want to focus on here. It's reducing outdoor water usage by reducing your watering time. This is particularly important for South Orange County, as I'm sure will be discussed later, but we have a lot of clay soils that don't allow the water to infiltrate in. So it's better to do short duration, but more frequent watering. Using a smart irrigation timer. There are timers, and then there's also smart timers that can actually calculate the weather and take that into account and make appropriate adjustments in real time. And then something as simple as adjusting sprinkler heads to only water the landscaping. So again, in the picture depicted, you have some very nice irrigation heads actually. Those look like some modern irrigation heads, but there's a lot of overspray getting into the street. And then just making sure that you're on top of maintenance, replacing broken sprinkler heads and fixing those leaks, which not only is helpful for the environment, but saves you money in the long run. Irrigation system maintenance, some things to pay attention to: proper aim, setting the timer, knowing the best times to water, the most effective, watering by hand, and also fixing the leaks. Moving on to stormwater runoff prevention. The problem defined is stormwater runoff from homes can pick up pollutants and flush them into our waterways, impacting our beaches. We've already talked about this concept that any type of water, whether it be during dry weather or in this case during a rain event, can be a conveyance and pick up pollutants that are occurring in our urban environment and wash them into our natural local environmental resources. This is a great picture depicted here of a BMP that may not be obvious to most people, but it's actually a BMP that falls under the category of low impact development, as you'll see defined below there. And what's happening in this photograph is that there is a low point, which is where the rocks and the landscaping is. And so all of the rainwater that would be in that parking lot that would normally run off into the storm drain system is actually being directed by grading and building this low impact development BMP to allow the water to flow into the landscaped area and then go through either infiltration and naturally filter out the pollutants and recharge groundwater, or both doing that and flowing through the landscaping and getting that filtering action before it actually gets into the storm drain system, so it's cleaned before it hits the storm drain system. Similarly, we're talking about hardscapes in residential areas. So the problem is very similar. The rain will fall onto impervious surfaces, pick up pollutants, carry those into the storm drain. So some of the solutions, the best management practices we've come up with is design and implementation of permeable surfaces. So in the photograph, it's depicting permeable surfaces that you have some gaps in between pavers and also some grass or landscaping that allow rainwater to naturally infiltrate into the ground where it's cleaned and it does not flow off of the property and carry pollutants. Again, continuing on with common HOA activities is landscape maintenance. One of the potentially most significant contributors is fertilizers. Fertilizers have nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus in them that can significantly impact natural waterways and cause algal blooms or other things that are unnatural and impact the environment and the animals that live there. So the solutions we're targeting are not to over-fertilize. The easiest way to do that is to actually just double check the instructions and apply the fertilizer as is directed by the manufacturer. If fertilizer gets on to hardscape, use methods like sweeping it up, or you can use a blower but blow it back into the landscaping rather than into the street or the storm drain system. And then we want to make sure that if there's rain predicted, that you're not applying fertilizer within 48 hours of a predicted rain event. And then if you can, always seek out those organic fertilizers rather than the alternative chemical fertilizers. Moving on to landscape maintenance, but specific to pesticides in a similar manner. Pesticides can be very detrimental to the environment where it's very useful in a residential setting. As soon as that gets into our local environmental resources, it can have significant impacts where it kills off, a very small concentration can kill off insects and worms and things of that nature that impacts the entire food web of our natural resources. So we ask that pesticides are used very carefully. Again, don't overuse pesticides. Using more does not equate to a better effect. And in fact, what can happen is you kill off good species of insects or things like that, and it could make things worse. So follow the manufacturer's directions. Again, if it gets onto impervious surfaces, you don't want to hose that off. You want to use dry sweeping methods, or if you use a blower or a sweep, you want to push that back into the landscape where it's to be used. Integrated pest management practices are really great. It's something that landscape maintenance contractors are typically aware of, and you can really reduce or eliminate use of pesticides by integrating IPM or integrated pest management. And an example would be like being able to identify a good bug that is not a pest that might actually eat a pest that you're trying to get rid of. So you wouldn't want to use pesticides and kill the good bug when that bug is there to protect you from the bad bug. just a quick example. And then again, cleaning up spills, and then paying attention to the weather forecast and not using pesticides immediately prior to a rain, because not only is that going to get washed off into the environment and have impacts, but you've just wasted a bunch of money on applying pesticides and then having it washed away. Pressure washing. We always encourage everyone to use dry cleanup methods. However, wet cleanup methods such as a hose or pressure washing are allowed, but under certain conditions, namely that you want to capture, contain all of the wastewater, and not allow it to discharge to the storm drain system, and then that wastewater needs to be properly disposed of. Vehicle parking. So in this one, vehicle parking management can actually impact other BMPs, such as the street sweeper here. So if you do have a street sweeping program, or in this case, if the city has a street sweeping program, it's really important to try to manage parking to allow the street sweeper to get in and do its job. And these BMPs will describe the methods to do that. So solutions are removing the vehicles and no parking on street sweeping day type of signs. Vehicle washing. We always encourage folks to wash their vehicles in designated areas. If you want to go to a commercial car wash, that's great. All of that wastewater is actually captured and recycled in those systems for commercial car washes. A lot of HOAs actually have designated car washing areas that facilitate the same thing. They capture the wastewater and it gets disposed of in a proper manner. If your residents do decide to wash the cars on their own, we always encourage them to park on a permeable surface or redirect the wastewater into a permeable surface so it does not discharge out into the storm drain system. Pet waste. This can be a significant issue. You may recall from our WQIP that one of the primary things we're trying to tackle is to get rid of bacteria, or more specifically pathogens that impact human health. Dogs and other animals can be a source of that, so we encourage the HOAs to provide signage and to also, if you can, a lot of HOAs choose to put out dog walk bags in strategic spots where they know that a lot of people are walking their dogs, and that way they have, if they forget to bring their own pet waste bag, they have one available and they can use, and then properly dispose of that into the trash. Trash collection, recycling, disposal. This is solid waste management. One of the biggest takeaways here is that during inspections, we often find that the lids are left open. And what happens is, whether it's wind dispersal, trash gets out into the environment, or the lids are left open and rain goes through there, comes in contact with all the trash and can carry pollutants away in that trash. And the other thing is vectors. So sometimes crows, birds, rats, other animals get into the trash, and not only do they tear it out, pull it out of the trash cans and disperse it, but it may actually be an attraction for vectors, which you don't want in your community. Nobody wants rats in their community. So what's really critical for us is that we, HOAs, ensure that the lids are maintained in a closed position. And this slide is depicting, as we saw before, this is a summary of the respective BMP fact sheets that correlate to specific activities. But in this case, these activities are related to those HOAs that have privately owned streets and storm drains. We won't be able to get into the details on these, but please go ahead and refer to the respective BMP fact sheets for more information. And of course, we are always available as a resource. Reporting pollution. So the best ways to do that are the pollution hotline, and if you don't want to make the phone call, there's also a quick and easy form that you can fill out on the website, and you can see the phone number and web address provided there. And our ask is that you may not exactly know if it's pollution or not. If it's suspected pollution, please call it in and we will have somebody dispatched to investigate and then go from there. To conclude, we have a very comprehensive program that we've collaboratively put in a lot of effort with, plenty of resources for you. One of the key takeaways is that HOA maintenance activities can impact our waterways in both a negative and positive way, so we want to see the positive impacts by implementing the BMPs that we discussed today. Make a difference in the environment. The way to do that, the resources that are provided and made available, BMP fact sheets provide the main source of guidance and identify the minimum requirements that are required to be implemented. And you also have all of the municipalities and the County of Orange to contact as a reference should you ever need it. Please reach out to us. We are a resource for you, and please remember that you make a difference. You are the solution to pollution. Again, getting more information and resources, you can visit h2oc.org, or you can visit your city's local website. And then going over each city, we have respective contacts. If you need to reach out with any questions, please use us for a resource. We're here to help you. And just thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today.
Great presentation, Devin. His presentation really brings to light how we all can do our part to make an impact on the environment and our community. Next, we'll jump right in with a presentation by Lindsay Stuvik, Water Efficiency Manager for Multnomah Water District. Whether you're on the board, managing an HOA landscape, or interested resident, everyone has the opportunity to contribute to water efficiency efforts. Lindsay will be providing resources and tools to help your HOA maximize outdoor water efficiency. Lindsay, you're up.
Thanks so much for that introduction. My name is Lindsay Stuvik, and I manage the Water Efficiency Department at Multnomah Water District. And on behalf of the 7 water providers in South Orange County, I'm really excited to be here to talk to you a little bit about water efficiency programs and tools that are commonly found across our region. And so I know in many ways 2020 has been a very challenging year, so I'm really excited that you're here to join us virtually and that we get a chance to share some of this great educational material and to just let you know that we're still here to support you. We still have lots of resources and programs, and our staff are here to help you achieve your water management goals. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So water supply is a huge driver for why we promote water efficiency in South Orange County. Almost 100% of our water in the South Orange County region is imported from Metropolitan Water District, and that comes from 2 main sources. In a typical year, about half of that water will come from the Northern California river systems through the State Water Project, and the other half will come from the the Colorado River Basin through the Colorado River Aqueduct, and that's this large piece of machinery that you see here. Now, Metropolitan has the operational flexibility to change that water supply in any given year, depending on if there's a drought or if there's an abundance of supply. So for example, during the drought, there wasn't a lot of water in Northern California to import, so nearly 100% of our water supply was switched over to be imported from the Colorado River. And then the following year, we had an abundance of rain and snowpack, and Metropolitan was actually able to switch all of their engineering to allow 100% of the water from Northern California to be brought in to serve the area. So having that kind of operational flexibility is really great, but it comes at a premium. Imported water is a very expensive supply source, and it's one of the reasons that we talk quite a bit about reducing or eliminating water waste and really promoting water efficiency, because really the cheapest unit of water is the one that you don't have to buy. Now, South Orange County has also been really good about doing local projects such as recycled water. I know for Molten Niguel, we provide, of all of our demand, about 25% of that demand is met with recycled water, and we'll touch on that a little bit more later in the presentation. And we also have done quite a bit to try to get some water out of the ground and some local reliability projects just to improve our redundancy and to be able to supply water to our region. So what are the benefits of water efficiency? Well, as we just discussed, if you save water, you save money. And you also save energy. You know, it takes a lot of energy to pump water uphill and deliver it. And so if we're able to save water, we can actually reduce our energy costs, not just our direct costs, but the embedded costs of energy. One of the other things I like to talk to people about is you can avoid property damage if you limit overspray and overwatering. I like to always point out this picture, and there's several more. I actually walked around my HOA and took lots of pictures because I was going to put multiple pictures in here, but only one would fit. But you can, if you reduce runoff, you won't have to worry about reslurrying your asphalt quite as often, or having these grooves that are cut into sidewalks from the overwatering running down into the street. So that's just another thing to consider when you're looking at whether or not you should do an efficiency project or a turf removal project, is how much water or how much damage could I avoid to the property by doing this project, and the costs. And as we heard earlier today, it would improve the quality of our local creeks and beaches. Also, not having to go out and source new supplies of water helps us delay investment in capital infrastructure, as well as storage projects, the cost of which is passed on to customers. And so if we can avoid having to make those investments, it keeps our water rates low. And one more reason to be water efficient, it's a California way of life. Just within the last decade, we experienced the worst drought on record in California. And some of the legislation that came out of that drought that was effected in 2018 was really meant to promote water efficiency and eliminate water waste across the state. And as a result, every California urban water retailer will receive a budget. It will be based on an indoor standard for residential. It'll be based on an outdoor standard. There's actually going to be efficiency standards for landscaped areas, as well as water loss. And all of these will be required and enforceable after 2022. And just like any budget, if we go over, we could incur some penalties for noncompliance. So I don't want you to think that water budgets are bad. They're actually a really effective tool for helping you use water efficiently. In fact, at Molten, we have a water budget incorporated into our rate structure. And when we incorporated it in 2011, we saw a 4,000-foot acre drop over time. That saves us and our ratepayers $4 million every year. So that's money that doesn't need to go to our ratepayers, all because we're using water more efficiently. So these budgets are actually based on science. We have local evapotranspiration and weather data that we incorporate into our budgets. And whether you're billed with a budget or you're just provided that budget to help you use water more efficiently, it's going to be customized to you. Every month you're going to receive a custom budget that's going to tell you how much water you should be using. And if you ever get a high bill, or if you find that you're going over your budget, that could indicate a leak or that you're possibly overwatering. So I really encourage you to use that budget as a tool. And let's do a little deeper dive on the outdoor water budgets. Since most of us are here talking about outdoor water management, sustainable water management outdoors, I just wanted to do a little deeper dive on how those water budgets are calculated. Now, this is just an example. Since there are 7 water providers and we all provide a water budget of some sort, this equation will change. So make sure you check with your local agency to find out which equation you're working with. But in general, the reason that they're customized is because it's based on the irrigable area that you are using or that your meter is serving. And so anybody that's going to have a smaller area is going to probably have a smaller budget. And if you've got a larger area, you'll get a larger budget. It just makes it fair. We also incorporate, as I mentioned, evapotranspiration. It sounds like a scary word, but it's really just the amount of water that's lost to the atmosphere. It gets lost and we give it back to you to replace that water that gets lost. It's evaporation and transpiration, which we like to call plant sweat. It's just the water that's lost from plants that goes into the atmosphere. You may also see a plant factor or an ET adjustment factor, and that's just going to have really an indicator of the type of plants that are going to be served. So for example, it's actually on a scale of 0 to 1, where 1 is the most water-loving plant you can think of, maybe like a Kentucky bluegrass, and a 0.3 is like a California native. And then with that ET adjustment factor, sometimes there's also an efficiency factor that's built in. And then finally, you'll see some numbers over here on the side. Those are just conversion factors to get you to a billing unit. That's what you're going to see on your bill. Without going too in depth, what I really just want to drive home is that the variation that you're going to see in your water budget throughout the year is really driven by ET. In the summer it gets hotter, you're going to have a larger budget. And in the winter it gets cooler, we have shorter days, there's less solar radiation that's hitting the plants, you're going to see smaller budgets. And the one thing that we really see is that in the fall, when the days start to become shorter and they get cooler, we still see people irrigate as if it's summertime, just because it gets a little warm during the middle of the day. But you should know your ET will drop off and your budgets will drop. So please watch your ET and use your water budget and irrigate accordingly. So another really great resource is recycled water. It's locally produced and it does us the benefit of offsetting potable consumption. Like I said earlier, 25% of Moulton's demands are now met with recycled water, and many of the agencies in South Orange County actually offer recycled water. One thing you should know about recycled water, it is highly treated wastewater that's delivered via purple pipes. I'm sure you all have seen this sign. But just because it's recycled water doesn't mean that it shouldn't be irrigated to a budget. That's still a best management practice, because when recycled water runs off of your property, it actually has more salts in it than potable water, and it can have an even greater impact on our local creeks and beaches. So just keep that in mind. Whether you're irrigating with either source, you should always irrigate to a budget. If you're interested in getting recycled water, like I said, please check with your local agency first to see if they offer it and if it's available, because they may even have a retrofit program available to help you convert your meter to recycled water. And now we've come to everybody's favorite part, rebates. The district, as well as the other water providers in South Orange County, continue to offer rebates both for indoor and outdoor devices. Some of the outdoor devices that we offer are a weather-based irrigation controller. This is a device that's actually going to use weather data to help control your irrigation throughout the year and help you stay within a budget. We also offer high-efficiency rotating nozzles as well as high-efficiency large rotators. If you're going to apply for these devices, please make sure you read the terms and conditions on them, because sometimes there are minimums for them. We also continue to offer even high-efficiency toilets and ultra-low flow urinals and ice machines for your indoor areas, maybe even your recreational areas. Other thing I want to add too is that you may want to check with your energy utility for additional rebates, because sometimes you'll be able to double up on some of these. So I always like to add, for commercial rebates, it's a different procedure than applying for a residential rebate. Many of us have received a rebate where we just go to the store, purchase something, and then apply, and then we get the money later on in the mail. But this is a little different, and it's because commercial projects tend to be very large. And so we just want to make sure that we have the money available to you when you go to apply for these and you didn't purchase them first. And so here's the procedure. You would go to SoCalWatersmart.com and create an account. And at that time, what you'll need is the quantity and the types of devices that you're going to be purchasing, and then you would request a reservation. That will give us time to take a look and make sure that that money is available, and so that way it's available when you need it. And then we will send you a letter to proceed. Once you get your letter to proceed, then you can go out and purchase and install. And you typically will have 60 days to do that process. Once complete, just fill out the application online, and then that's it. Easy peasy, just a little different. Another very popular program, not just in South Orange County, but just across all of Orange County, is the turf replacement and spray to drip program. So commercial turf is actually meant to replace your grass with drought tolerant or native plants, just something that's got a lower overall water need, whereas the commercial spray to drip program is going to help you improve your irrigation efficiency. And they're nice to couple up, because you can actually get the $2 per square foot for the commercial turf program in addition to the spray to drip program. So you can add on. And just make sure that you check with your local agency just for the incentive level. And you'll also need to get a pre and post inspection, so make sure to schedule that. Don't take out your turf first. That's the one thing I want to leave you with. Make sure that you look at the terms and conditions, check with your local agency, and try to take advantage of both if possible. Some of us offer both of them. Give us a call and we'll see what we can do to help you. And if you want to find an example of what drought-tolerant landscaping looks like, there are dozens of demonstration gardens, many of which are actually hosted by some of your local water agencies. So I would encourage you to get out, go take a look at some of these drought tolerance. You know, I think a lot of folks have the idea that drought-tolerant landscaping needs to be rocks and cactus, and it doesn't. There's a very nice floral palette available out there, and you can see lots of examples of those at these demonstration gardens. And if one of these is not nearby you, give your local water agency a call because they can direct you to the closest demonstration garden. And not just residential. I know we're talking about a commercial application here, so we can direct you to some of the larger ones so you can see what a commercial demonstration garden would look like. Some of the services that we offer are residential assistance. So if customers are experiencing a high bill or if they suspect that they have a leak, just give us a call. We're offering assistance sometimes virtually or even over the phone. It depends on your water agency. But yeah, that's a program that we've been doing for quite some time. And even during COVID, we've been able to continue that kind of assistance for your residents and for yourselves. We also provide free large landscape audits. And this is a really great program. It's been around for quite a while. The landscape needs to be 1 acre or larger. But essentially, a landscape professional will come to your site, perform an audit, note places where you could convert your turf to drought-tolerant landscaping, and provide you with a really great report at the end that estimates some of that potential water and money savings. And just to let you know, you need to have an account manager apply for this. HOA board members, I know you get excited about this, and so do I, but make sure that you communicate with your account manager because they'll have to be the ones on the application. And if you're interested in applying, I've actually put the link to this program below. Please take advantage of it. Like I said, it's free and we're willing to work with you. We'd love to see what's on your report and help you out, help you try to achieve some of those goals. So another resource that we provide are commercial portals. Every single one of the South Orange County water agencies has some type of online portal to help you either view your usage, your past usage, help you pay your bills. Some of them have water efficiency tips and resources or even leak alerts. It just depends on the portal that's being offered. So I really encourage you to reach out. If I haven't said it enough, reach out to your local agency because we've got tons of resources, maybe even beyond what's being presented throughout this entire presentation, that could really help you achieve your sustainable water management goals. Another resource, and this is really for our professional landscapers out there, we do a ton of professional landscape training, not just in South Orange County, but across Southern California. In the past, we've offered bilingual trainings. We've got some that are on watershed-wise professional practices for the landscape. And there's actually 2 that are being offered virtually through Metropolitan Water District. Right now, there's a dual certification where you could get a qualified water efficient landscape certification, as well as the certified water manager from the CLCA, which is really neat. Typically, you'd have to sit through 1 class for each of those, but being in a virtual world, we've got some latitude now. There's some flexibility. We're able to offer dual certifications. So please take advantage of those. And if you're not familiar with how to access that, give us a call and we'll put you in contact with how to get registered. Okay, so something else to discuss today are best practices for water management. One of the things that you'll want to do is take regular meter reads. There's lots of resources available. You can download sheets to do weekly reads. There's even apps out there to do this. And you can get reads on a weekly basis, and actually depending on your metering technology, you may be even able to get reads on an hourly basis. Reach out to your local agency to find out what kind of meter read resolution is available to you, but that's going to help you manage your water. If you see a spike that you're not expecting, that's going to help you go out and troubleshoot. Understand our outdoor budget equations. There are 7 water providers in South Orange County, and we all provide some type of water budget, whether it's in your rate structure or not. And we're all going to have different budgets or budget equations. So make sure that you reach out to us, know those budget equations, because if you're working across our service areas, it's not going to be the same from one to the other. Also, know your ET reference sources. Some of us, as I mentioned, ET is what's going to drive your water budget year to year. So it's really important to know what that source is. Some of us actually use CIMIS data. Some of us use locally derived data. So reach out, just talk to us. We love to talk about water. We'll tell you all about where our ET comes from. Next thing is to implement weather-based irrigation technology. There's a rebate for this. You can get a standalone weather-based irrigation controller, or you can get a central system. It's all just based on the per station amount. Take advantage of our rebates and really implement this technology to help you meet those sustainability goals. Regular irrigation system site walks. I can't stress this enough. If you're out on the site, do a station walkthrough, look for pooling, look for geysers, try to prevent an issue before it becomes a big problem and actually affects your water bill. That's just a nice way to make sure that you're doing some routine maintenance and catching things before it becomes too problematic. You want to manage your irrigation to reduce runoff. You can use a cycle and soak approach, and I know many of you are pros at this and you know that there's ways to reduce runoff, but that's one of the things that we're really trying to encourage here, trying to limit the impacts to our local creeks and beaches. We also encourage our HOAs and property managers to take a performance-based approach to creating contracts. There's a great example provided by MODOC, the Municipal Water District of Orange County. You can find on their website, and it just provides tips and tricks on what to put into your contract to ensure you get the best or the most out of your landscape program. Another thing, and we've talked about this a lot, is convert non-functional turf. A lot of times if the only person that's walking on it is the person that's mowing the grass, might not need to be grass. Consider actually taking out that grass and converting it to a drought-tolerant landscape. You'll save water and money and energy, and it'll beautify that area. And then finally, great communication. That's always a best practice. And I'll touch on that just a little bit because I know largely in the room we've got landscapers, property managers, board members, and even residents. But some of the stuff that as water agencies we hear, and I wanted to communicate to you, is these are the things that you should chat about. Who has access to the water use data? If you're an HOA board member, who should you go to? Usually it's your property manager because they're normally the account holders. So how are those data accessed? Is there a portal? Are you getting them through just your paper bills? Have that talk. Who applies for rebates and programs? Is it the board member? Is it the landscaper? Have some type of procedure or protocol that you come up with so that way you can take advantage of these rebates and the money that's available out there. Who manages turf removal projects? Same principle applies. How are leaks communicated? Like a lot of times there's really neat digital technologies that allow you to get alerts on your phone and even forward those to your landscapers so that way they can be aware of any issues out in the landscape. And then finally, who are your city and water agency contacts? That's us. I'm actually going to provide a nice list of all of our emails and phone numbers at the end of this so you can get to know who we are. And there's always other opportunities to just reach out, partner, and pilot some of these things. Know your network. That includes us. We want to help. We want to help innovate and help you build a sustainable community. And if you have any materials for your HOA, or if you need materials for your HOA, I know many of you have customer portals and newsletters. Reach out to us. We've got lots of literature that we can provide that you can provide to your residents because they also have a lot of rebates that are available to them. And then we want to hear from you. Share your water savings ideas. If you are interested in checking out a master valve program, or if you want to do a big, large landscape project, reach out to us. And I just want to say thank you very much for tuning in today. I know everybody's busy, but I appreciate that you took the time to tune in. Here's the list of all of our emails and phone numbers, and thanks so much for attending.
Awesome presentation, Lindsay. We can't stress enough how much we enjoy partnering with our HOA community, so please do reach out to us with your specific questions. We know that each HOA is a little different, and the different water agencies and cities that are represented here today would be more than happy to discuss your specific needs with you. To switch things up a bit, I'll now turn it over to my colleague on the Molten Water District Board, Director Dick Fiore, who will introduce our next speaker.
Thank you for the opportunity to be part of today's virtual program. I am Dick Fiore, one of the members of the Board of Directors of the Molten Water District. As a longtime member of the Community Association Institute, I'm very pleased today that we have Lisa Lukes, the Executive Director of the Orange County Regional Chapter of the Community Association, to present the next segment. The Community Association Institute, or CAI as it is often referred to, is a global organization that has the mission of providing information, education, and resources to community associations, or homeowners associations as they are often referred to. And the boards of directors and other volunteers and professionals, like many of you here today, to provide support to the successful development and governance of association communities. Annalisa's presentation will focus on the expertise, resources, and support that the Orange County CAI chapter can provide to association board members, community managers, and landscapers to improve outdoor irrigation, water use and efficiency, and meet their landscaping and budgetary goals. With that, thank you, Annalisa, for joining us today. Our virtual stage is now yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I am so happy to be here with you today. And again, we're going to be talking about partnering with CAI Orange County on how to build better communities through education, networking, and advocacy for common interest developments. So part of today's agenda is giving you an overview about who Community Associations Institute is, because I would guess that you're probably not familiar with us, even though we've been around for 40 plus years. I will also give you just a bit of a taste or a flavor for what we do in terms of education as a 501c6 nonprofit trade organization that serves homeowner leaders like yourselves, professional community managers, and the rest of the community association industry. And then we'll provide some resources as well. Now, why are we here? Why is CAI Orange County or Community Associations Institute here today? We've been asked to participate in this webinar because our industry has access to business partners, experts in areas that run the gamut of anything that you might need in order to make sure that your community association is run well, maintained well, and that your corporation is also benefiting from your services and your volunteerism. So what does that mean? We have environmental consultants, landscape designers, and maintenance providers who might be of service to you as a result of the training that you're going to get here today. We have stormwater and storm drain services, as well as so many other myriad of opportunities and service providers, from attorneys to insurance professionals to reserve analysts and more. We also provide educational content, whether they are in person when we go back live, as well as Zoom events like this one. And in fact, we have done about 25 to 30 educational programming since our chapter went remote in mid-March of this year. In addition, we have magazine articles in our OC View magazine, which is a publication that you can access on our website. And we're able to talk about fundamentals from budgets and reserves and knowing how to spend your money in the most wise and responsible manner, whether it is on how to save money on water and utilities and other types of resources, to law. And we also have all kinds of other specific conversations that are topical depending on what's happening in the industry today. So again, I invite you to participate and join CAI Orange County in some of these events and check out what we offer. So in terms of why CAI Orange County exists, we are here for one reason and one reason alone, and that is to build better communities, the exact communities that you serve as volunteers. We are part of a 64-chapter international network of nonprofit 501c6 organizations that provide training for homeowner volunteers like yourselves, as well as professional community managers and business partners, all serving this vast industry we call community association. In Orange County, we have been around since 1977, and you see our website there at caioc.org, and we have nearly 1,500 members in our chapter alone. And again, we are here to serve you, support you, and help you get the answers that you need for your community. We're here to build better communities, predominantly through education. Again, we're part of a 64-chapter network with 40,000 plus members, just like you. And we do this through seminars, workshops, educational programming, even fun events, and of course, magazine articles. We also have this connection with our national office based in Washington, D.C. And you can go to caionline.org to find out more about that, because we are also the publisher of the largest collection of resources relating to community association management and governance, including website content, books, all kinds of other resources. We also have an advocacy arm, and so we interact with the legislatures on the local level and the statewide level in order to represent this industry in the best light possible. And we also have a foundation that provides research activities relating to this industry. So I'm here for the next few minutes just to give you a taste of the type of education that you're going to get through our organization. Again, this is something that you can apply, share with your managers, share with other volunteers in your organization, and this is just one part of a whole host of content that we're able to provide you. So I hope that you get something out of this and that you enjoy it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Now, did you know that more than 328,000 community associations exist in the United States today? That's a lot. That's 1 out of 5 Americans who live in a community association, the same kind that you volunteer to manage every day. There are 3,000 to 5,000 new community associations formed each year in the United States. And in Orange County alone, we have 5,000 HOAs. So the opportunity is vast, and we are here again to help make sure that those communities are managed well through proper training and guidance to volunteers as well as the professionals who work in this industry. Now, typically when I do this training, I would ask you, and you would try to guess an answer to this question, but I'm going to go ahead and ask the question anyway and give you the answer right away. So what do you think? How many Americans do you think currently serve in a community association board of directors? Is it 60,000, 600,000, 1 million, or 1.6 million? Yeah, the answer is nearly 2 million Americans who give their time and their talent to their community. So we thank you for doing that, and we appreciate the time that you provide to your neighbors and your community members. So this is part of the training that usually we will go into when it comes to governance, and we will talk about the 4 main functions of the board of the HOA. And so very briefly, it really is as follows: to represent your community association, to protect the association's real and intangible assets. That means the money that is within the bank account of the community association, and this training today will help you get some resources on how to make sure that you are using your utilities in the most efficient way. Number 3 is to enforce the governing documents, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And last but not least is to build the social and civic well-being of the community. All right. So a little bit about governing documents. Again, you'll learn more about this when you sit in one of our modules, particularly in law. But the governing documents provide for the legal structure and operation of the association, which is a corporation in California. Now, the association is subject to federal law, state law, case law, and local statutes. And there are quite a number of federal laws that impact your associations. We go into detail about all of those laws, but again, it's a very complicated area that you work in, and we are here to support you and get you the resources that you need to get your work done. Here's another tidbit or highlight, if you will, a hierarchy of authority. So the work that you do as volunteers really is governed by a myriad of sources. At the top would be the laws and statutes, federal as well as state, and then followed by the recorded map or the plan, and then your CC&Rs, articles of incorporation, bylaws, rules, regulations, and resolutions. So we go through all of that and what each governing document means as it relates to you so that you're able to do the best volunteer job as possible for your neighbors and your community. You'll also get a chance to learn about board power and duties through our training. We have a community leadership training program and a board leadership certificate program, so you're able to get extra recognition for having gone through that. Because there is a difference between powers or actions that the board can do and duties or actions that the board must do. Then a little bit about reserve study. So this is an entire module for our classes, and this is really something that you're going to want to know about because as you make decisions about your association's budget, it really has an impact on what you're planning for in the long term. You may or may not be aware that a reserve study is an in-depth evaluation of your community association's physical components. It also provides an analysis of the cost and time frame for any anticipated replacements or major repairs to your common area elements like parking lots, playgrounds, pools, which again impact utilities and water usage, lighting, roofs, and other components. We also talk about service contracts because as a community, think of it like a mini city. And there are a lot of components and features that are associated with that. And being able to learn how to read contracts and still consulting with the general counsel about it, but making sure that you're asking the right questions is really important. So we also partner with service providers relating to lawn care, again relevant to this particular topic, pool management, utilities. Those are 3 of the areas that are again most relevant to this particular day. You're going to want to know that your contractor is currently licensed and that they are abiding by current law when it comes to providing services to your community association. In addition, in that module, we also talk about miscellaneous budget information, which again goes to the heart of the workshop today, because everything that you do and how you make decisions regarding your landscaping or water runoffs does have an impact on how much money you're able to save or spend in your community. And the budgets could change from year to year depending on the statutes that may be passed and that took effect at the beginning of that year. So it's really important to be aware of new building codes for sprinkler systems, which again may benefit you, changes in local statutes and building signage, updates to the American with Disabilities Act or ADA requirements. That's part of the federal law that again helps to govern or oversees this area, and notices about utility and insurance company rate increases. So there's a lot there, and we do our best to unpack that to support homeowner leaders. So we have been talking about offering these classes to homeowner leaders and board members like you, but we also offer classes and education to professional community managers. And here's a word about why you may want to partner with a community manager. Depending on the size of your community association, as well as the time available from your volunteers, perhaps the skill set or level of interest from your volunteers, you may need to partner with someone who has been trained in this area, has been educated, and has gotten designations and continuing education in order to serve your community in the best way possible. Now, in terms of training, CAI Orange County provides the training for community managers, and we also provide the designations in order to give them continuing education. You see on the slide what we call the alphabet soup in this industry: CMCA, AMS, PCAM, LSM, AAMC, and it really goes from the level and the length of experience that a community manager has. You start off with a CMCA and then you proceed with an AMS after 2 years of experience, and then PCAM is sort of considered the PhD of professional community managers. LSM is for large-scale managers for large communities of 1,500 units or more and budgets of $2 million or more. And then each community association management company can get a designation from CAI that's known as the AAMC, provided that a certain level of their managers get that PhD level training or the PCAM from CAI. So we are the educational body that provides those designations through education. And again, we can walk you through all of this if you ever had any questions, but it really matters to partner with someone who has been trained properly in managing your community association. I was also asked to talk a little bit about communication and how do we get the word out to residents about things that may be related to saving money, any changes with your service providers, and a number of other topics. So I'm going to go into that just briefly. Now, did you know that 1 in 4 Americans volunteer in the United States? And that those who are employed between the ages of 35 and 44 years are most likely to volunteer? And those who are 65 and older contribute the most in terms of hours. So that's a really wonderful advantage, and I'm so happy to be talking with many volunteers here in this workshop today. So one thing that we talk about, and again, this is just a taste of this particular module on communication, is that communication problems can sometimes be dubbed the silent killer of organizational effectiveness. And if we were here in person, I would interact with you more and ask you a little bit more about what that means or what your experience might have been in terms of communication. But in our training, we do talk about 4 factors that impact or contribute to effective communications: openness, methods, tone, and frequency. And I'm going to go over that very briefly here. So openness refers to a board communication strategy that asks and encourages owners to ask questions, share ideas, and make suggestions. It makes it so that it's a fun place to give ideas, share any new ways to do things, and really be open to the voices of your residents. It fosters collaboration and mutual respect, and it also helps leadership, that would be you, gain insight about what is in the heads of your residents. It requires active listening, which is a skill that builds understanding and rapport between you and the other person who's listening. Some active listening techniques, and I'm sure this is not new to you, is making sure that there are no distractions when you're communicating with someone. Making sure that you're observing body language and you're looking them straight in the eye. Acknowledging what is being said by nodding or saying things like, "I see" or "I understand." Repeating or summarize what you heard in order to confirm. And asking questions for more information or clarity. Again, this is just a taste of some of what we talk about. Second factor is methodology, and the last 2 decades have revolutionized the ways we connect with each other, as I'm sure you can relate to. While in the past, the primary way to communicate with residents would be by newsletter, many boards these days are really doing other ways of communicating using technology, although it's really important to still have that traditional printed way of communicating. In terms of changes and demographics, approximately 40% of the world now has an internet connection, and between 1999 to 2013, we know that the number of internet users have increased tenfold. What we recognize and what we recommend is that you use a blended approach, which means using technology as well as traditional methods to communicate with your residents about anything that may be happening in your community. So that's using electronic newsletters, email, traditional letters and newsletters, especially to those who are requesting printed copies. Hope that you have a community association website, maybe even social media, and of course, texts and phone calls. The third factor is tone, and I'm sure that you can agree that tone has an ability to build relationships, get things done through others, and deliver news, even bad news, without alienating others. So again, we go into more detail as to what that means. Last but not least is frequency, and we know at CAI that residents typically complain about not receiving information in a timely manner or getting information from the board only about meeting notices or rules and violations, when I'm sure there are a lot of other wonderful things happening in your community, and we want to know about that too. So if you have wonderful things going on in your community, please let us know, because we would love to tell those stories. So a little bit about scheduling. You want to make sure that you establish a communication pattern and stick to it. You want to share urgent news that impacts your residents in a very timely manner. And that's really it in terms of a taste of what classes we offer. And here, this slide talks about the classes that we offered in the month of October, from elections, which is relating to SB 323, a new law that was passed and enacted in January of this year, to financial checkups. I'm sure something that you all have in mind as budgets are getting ready to be communicated with your residents and your owners. Last but not least, I just want to share, we also have a lot of fun, and it's not just about education, but we give back to the community. We have an actual toy drive that's happening through the holidays this year, and we make that possible through our members. We have a lot of social events. We just had a bingo event in September. And you know, it's a little bit different this year, but again, would love to see you at some of our events as soon as we go live, and even virtually. And last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, we have a legislative advocacy activity, and this is really where homeowner leaders can make such a big difference, because those who are elected in state office want to hear from you. And we want to hear from you as well. We want to be able to share with you the different laws that are affecting our industry, the bills that are about to be presented to the legislature in California, and that could really impact you in the long run. So we encourage you to stay connected with us about this. And this is just a slide about our Legislative Action Committee, otherwise known as California Legislative Action Committee, or CLAC. And we partner with them on different types of calls to action regarding, like I said earlier, bills that may be up for a vote in either the state and or the assembly, and certainly if they got passed in either house, and those that might be in front of the governor's office for signature. So that is it. Thank you so much for inviting CAI Orange County to this event. We appreciate being here. We appreciate the time and the work that you put in as volunteer leaders in your community associations. I know we have managers in the audience as well, so thank you, and we look forward to partnering with you down the road.
Thank you, Annalisa, and great presentation. Along with hearing from our local water agencies and cities, we're thrilled to have you join us this year to bring your perspective on how we can all further collaborate and coordinate to bring even more resources to our HOA community. We want to remind our attendees that the presenters, as well as our partner cities and water districts, are here today to answer your questions, so please use the Q&A box to connect with us. To close out our presentations for today, we have Marianne Hugo, Garden Director for Orange County Coastkeeper. Marianne will talk about the very timely topic, firescaping, for our HOAs. She'll review how you can choose plants and maintain landscapes that are water efficient, meet fire safety goals, and protect our local watersheds. Take it away, Marianne.
Thank you so much for the great introduction. I was really excited when I found out about this opportunity. Fire escape is one of my very most favorite topics to talk about, and it's so important right now. So thank you so much for having me. I really am looking forward to a great presentation. Okay, my name is Marianne Hugo, and I'm from Orange County Coastkeeper, and I'd like to show you the garden where I work. I actually run a demonstration garden, and the garden that I run is in the city of Orange, and we have actual fire escape plants as well as smartscape plants that you can actually see growing. I do a lot of tours. If you would like to come out for a tour, you can email me ahead of time and I'll make sure that I'm there to meet you or to meet your HOA group. And we can walk through the garden and you can actually see the plants growing. And it's a huge difference to actually see the plants versus seeing a plant in a little pot at a nursery. So you'll have my contact information and I would love for you to come out. The garden's just a beautiful place, and now that the weather is going to be cooling off, it's a great opportunity to come out for a tour. Okay, the first thing I like to always tell people is that I actually do the same thing that I'm doing this workshop on today. I actually have a fire escape backyard. About 5 years ago, I took all of my grass out, which I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about later, and I replaced my water-thirsty yard with all fire escape plants. And you can see, this is a picture of my backyard that you can see here. You can see how I have a fire break, which we'll talk about. And you can see that you can get so much color from fire escape plants. I think oftentimes people think that you don't get color, but it's far from the truth. I love my yard, and I would highly encourage any HOA or any gardener to plant fire escape plants. So let's talk a little bit about fire escape. Well, why fire escape? Needless to say, I really don't need to tell you why to fire escape. This past fire season has just been terrible. And I only predict that we're going to continue to see a lot of fire in California. Our weather is really hot and dry. We're not officially in a declared drought, but we're just a dry state, let's face it. And it's going to continue that way. I know we've had periods of rain, but more often than not, it's going to be a very dry state. So with all of the changes in weather that we've had and all of the fire that's been happening, you can't go wrong with having some fire escape plants. The fire escape plants, even if there wasn't a threat of fire, the fire escape plants are absolutely beautiful. And the plus side to the fire escape plants is that they also use less water. So they're just an all-around environmental good choice. But right now, with everything that's happening with the wildfires and our wildfires being bigger and moving faster and more destructive, this is really a time to embrace the fire escape landscape. So the primary goal of fire escape is to reduce the amount of material around your complex that can burn. What you want to do is you want to plant your plants and maintain your plants so the amount of flammable material is decreased. And I'm going to talk about how you can do this. Today we're also going to talk about choosing the plants. That's a really important thing. You need to choose the right plants, but it's gotten to be really easy, and I'll give you some tips and tricks. Maintenance. We're going to talk about maintenance, and maintenance is really your number one key. It's imperative that you maintain your landscape. If you don't, no matter what plants you plant, everything's not going to happen. You've got to maintain your plants. And we're also going to talk about the importance of irrigation, because you do need to irrigate these plants. Okay, the first thing I'm going to say is that if you really want the fire escape, if you want fire escape to work for your HOA, your number one thing that you need to do is you need to talk to your residents and you need to inform your residents. This is actually a brochure from CAL FIRE that you can order free of charge. They'll send it out to your HOA. And you can actually have a meeting, or you can create flyers, however you want to communicate with your residents. But this is a really great brochure that they will send you. It's also bilingual, that you can give to your residents, that helps your residents understand how important it is to fire escape. So there's a lot of information out there. So it's really, really important that you keep your residents informed, especially if you're going to be changing out your landscape. And I'll give you some more information on that. Okay, so it used to be that it was really hard to figure out what plants were fire escape plants. When I first did my backyard, I did my backyard about, maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago. There was nothing. I had to drive around to a zillion nurseries and do all kinds of research to find these plants. Well, now there are absolutely fabulous lists of pre-selected plants that are all done for you, and they're actually really, really accurate and useful. CAL FIRE has done a list that I really, really like. You'll see it in the resources today, and you're also going to see a few of the plants off that list in my presentation. What's really great is that CAL FIRE gives you all the rules and regulations for HOA management, and there's a lot of rules you need to follow. And also they give you the plants that are recommended. So you can't just plant fire escape plants. I wish it was that easy. I wish I could say to you today, plant these 12 plants and you will never have to worry about fire again. It's not that easy. Fire escaping isn't just planting plants. Fire escaping is a whole comprehensive program that includes a lot of elements. There's no one answer. So as an HOA, you need to do an analysis of your complex and analyze everything about your complex, not just your landscape. You need to figure out about your location. You know, if you're on a hillside, fire travels faster up a hill. That's going to determine your pruning and what type of plants you plant. You need to figure out whether your roof and your building are up to fire code. Orange County is an aging county. Some of the buildings in Orange County are, over 50 years old, and those buildings did not have the same fire code as new construction. So you may have to go back and retrofit some parts of your HOA to bring your HOA up to current code. And I know that's very costly. That's why this is important that you come up with a plan where you can slowly implement some of these things. So that's really important. Again, this is what I mentioned before, location. The other thing you want to think about is wind. I live in the city of Orange, and every year, we all know, we get these terrible Santa Ana winds. So when I plant plants at my house and I'm out shopping for a plant, I look at a plant and I know ahead of time, can this plant withstand the Santa Ana winds? And is this plant a plant that I'm going to have to constantly prune so when I have a Santa Ana wind, it doesn't blow over? So that's something that you really want to think about. The other thing is sun exposure. You want to find out which way the majority of your plants face. And I know this is a little complicated because some HOAs have various areas. So what you'll need to do is figure out which areas you're going to convert and then what kind of sun exposure they get. And again, this is a given. Make sure your HOA has access. In other words, if you have an emergency, you need to have access where emergency vehicles can get through without bumping into any shrubs. Okay, again, you should be doing this. As an HOA, make sure you clean out all of your rain gutters. Just keep everything litter free, because if you don't, this is how the embers get in and start a fire. And again, this is just an example. There's two things wrong with this picture. One, you should not have any trees that close to a building. And the second thing is, look at the debris on the roof. So be sure that this doesn't happen in your HOA. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about defensible space. You want to work from your buildings out. Now, as I talk about defensible space, you'll see that in the next slides. There are 3 zones that are most common in firescaping. There's Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3. Now, here in Orange County, because we're densely built, a lot of us aren't going to have a Zone 3. Most of us have a Zone 1 or a Zone 2. So Zone 1 is the one that's really, really super important. That's 5 feet from any building. Zone 2 is 5 to 30 feet out. And then again, if you have a larger property, Zone 3 is 30 feet and then farther. So you really want to concentrate mainly on Zone 1 and Zone 2, but we are going to talk a little bit about Zone 3 today. So here's a really good illustration. You can see that Zone 1 is really around your building, and it's the most important zone. Zone 2, and they call Zone 1 lean and green because everything in there is very sparse, but yet green and beautiful. And I'll give you some tips on how you can make your HOA, your buildings look really nice. Zone 2 is where you have a few trees, and then Zone 3 and out is probably more like if you live someplace where you're in a wildland area. Okay, so in Zone 1, what you want to remember is that you don't want any plants touching your buildings. And in the 70s and the 80s, it was the style where you would plant a tree or a shrub all along the walls of your buildings, and you would also have trees really close to the buildings. It was just a popular style. The idea is that you plant that tree close to the building, and then you get shade and you beautify your buildings. But you really can't plant anything that close to a building. You need to have your plants out at least 5 feet away from your house. So you say to me, well, what do you do around your building? There's a lot of things you can do. You can put in some really beautiful decomposed granite pathways. You can put in boulders and stones. You can put in any kind of like beautiful artwork, or you can put a bench out there, or there's a lot of things you can do to fill in that space so it doesn't look too sparse. And even if you plant a tree farther out in Zone 2, that tree can still provide shade for your building. The idea is that the limbs of the tree are not touching the roof of any of your buildings. That's really important. And here's a good example. Any tree that you plant needs to be pruned according to how close it is to a building. If you look at Zone 1 here, you'll notice that that tree is really pruned high. You want to prune that tree so there's nothing touching the house. If you look at the illustration there, you'll see that that tree is pruned all the way up and none of the branches are touching the house. In Zone 2, you can leave your branches a little lower, and then out in Zone 3, you're still going to prune, but you don't need to worry so much about, pulling the branches up from the ground. Okay, so this is what I had mentioned before. You want to put in concrete, gravel. I have decomposed granite, which I absolutely love. It replaces concrete, but it gives you a really warm feeling. It's super easy to maintain. And it just gives warmth to your complex. Now, in Zone 1, you need to water. It's very important that you provide water to all of your plants. Any plant that's not watered is quickly going to become dry and crunchy and go up in flames. So, as an HOA, water is imperative, and you want to work on conserving water. So in Zone 1, what you're going to do is you're going to do what's called hydrozoning. And that means that when you plant your plants in Zone 1, you're going to pick plants that all have the same water requirements. You can do drip, you can do pop-ups, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter as long as the plants are irrigated. And I'll talk more about this when I get further in my presentation, but this is another reason why you need to take advantage of all these great rebates out there. Right now, there's wonderful rebates from the majority of the water districts where you can get drip irrigation rebate, you can get a smart timer, you can get rotary sprinkler heads. So be sure and check with your local water district, because there are a lot of really great rebates out there right now. I know at my house, this is an aside, but at my house, when I redid my fire escape yard, I got a rebate for my water district. I got a smart timer, I got drip irrigation, and I also got a rebate for taking out my grass. So take advantage of these things. It's just a really great opportunity to, save, to get a rebate, save some money, especially for your HOA, because doing this for an HOA is a costly endeavor, but I'm going to talk to you later about how you can ease into it and not have to spend a lot of money all at once. Okay. And the last thing I have down here, and I'm sure you already tell your residents this, you residents need to be reminded not to store a bunch of stuff against the side of their homes or on their balconies. I know, it's probably in the CC&Rs that you cannot do that, but time and time again, I go out to an HOA and I see a balcony piled with boxes, or I see a homeowner has leaned a bunch of stuff against the wall. You can't pile any kind of stuff against the building, and the balconies need to be clear of anything that can go up in flames. Okay, so here's zone 2, and actually this is the one that's lean and green. You can do more plants in zone 2, but again, you want a hydrozone, you need to water, and this is where you can plant some trees, is in zone 2. You want to plant what I call feature trees. So in zone 2 is where you're going to pick some really great fire escape trees that are like accent trees. And you're going to want to pick a theme for your HOA. Create a list of trees after you've done your research. Create a list of trees that you think you really like for your HOA. And as you slowly replace your trees, you're going to pop in these really great featured, beautiful, blooming fire escape trees. And you can do this in zone 2. Again, you need to water. And again, I'm going to talk about this over and over, but maintenance is the key. You cannot plant any tree, I don't care how fire escape proof it's supposed to be, unless you have it maintained. Any tree that's allowed to grow and is not properly pruned or maintained can still go up in flames. So this is where you want to work with your maintenance crew that you have on site and really talk to them about the importance of pruning. It's really important. Okay, now zone 3. A lot of you may not have zone 3 because Orange County is a highly developed area. But if you do happen to have an HOA where you live next to an area that's undeveloped, the new phrase that we're using right now is called wildland urban interface. And everyone is like, what is a wildland urban interface? I hadn't even heard the term until just maybe 6 months ago. Basically what it means is that your property is adjacent to an area that is undeveloped. Basically, when you leave your complex and you look over, you have a whole hillside of nothing but undeveloped land. Either, it could be a park, it could be, a federal forest, it could be anything that's not developed. And when you live adjacent to one of those areas, you have more of an issue of fire. Hopefully the person that's maintaining that area, you can contact them to make sure they're doing their weed abatement. But if you live adjacent to one of those areas, you're going to want to make sure that whoever owns that area is doing fire escape prevention methods, which means that the trees need to be pruned and also that the trees are at least 10 feet apart. And that's one thing I see is that in the 70s and the 80s, when we all planted trees, there was no 10 feet. Everything was planted really close together. You really want to thin out your trees, or if you don't want to thin them out, just make sure they're pruned. But as you plant new trees, make sure you have at least 10 feet apart. And you need to think about the tree before you plant it. If you plant a tree that's 50 feet wide, you need to know that when it's in that little small nursery container and you plant it, you need to plan for that 50-foot plant. Because what's going to happen if you don't is that you're going to spend the rest of your life pruning that tree to maintain a fire escape. So it's really important that you look at the list of fire escape plants and look at the size of the plant at fruition. When it's finally mature, how big is that plant going to get? It's really important. And again, you need to have your HOA crew out there. If you have an area if your area backs up to an area that's not yours, just make sure that you maintain your area along there and pick everything up. And the best thing you can do is find out who owns that adjoining area and call them and work with them and make sure that they're doing what they need to do to make sure that your community is safe. Okay, so here's a good example. If you do back up to an area, here's a before picture of basically just overgrown brush and trees. And then after it's thinned out, this is more what it looks like. And you can see that the trees are pruned up and that the trees are not touching each other. And that's really important because if your trees touch, you get what's called ladder fuel. So it jumps from tree to tree to tree. Now, I always throw in this slide. I know this is very dramatic. I don't know, I've never seen anything quite this dramatic, but I love this slide because it sends a point home. Do not clear everything around your community. It's absolutely not necessary, and it's more harm than good, because when it does grow back, it grows back more vigorously, and it allows invasive plants to establish because there's no competition. So you're going to end up with a whole hillside of invasive weeds and mustard and all that stuff you don't want. You're going to spend your life mowing it. So it's better to leave what's there and just maintain it. And besides that, it just looks awful. So I think most people know not to do this. I think I've seen this, but I think now people are learning that this is not what you want to do, especially when it rains and you have a whole problem with all the water and erosion, and just don't do this. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about the plants. The plants are the best part of this. The fire escape plants, I just love them. They're beautiful. But I have to tell you, there is no such thing as a fireproof plant. Do not think that you can go out and buy these magical plants and plop them in the ground and that you are not going to have anything burn. Anything will burn if the fire is hot enough and is fast enough. So there is nothing that's fireproof, including the plants. There are plants that are fire resistant, but that doesn't mean the same thing as fireproof. So it's really, really, really important that you maintain the plants. One of the quotes I have on here is that on hot, windy days when the ground is dry and we have those Santa Anas, anything will burn. So I love this quote, and I actually think I have this quote in here maybe twice because I love it so much. If there is any defense in fire landscaping, it is through maintenance rather than plant selection. Maintenance is what makes your plants truly fireproof. So you need to really maintain the plants. So, what types of fireproof plants should you choose? Again, at the end of this presentation, there's some great resources, 3 of which have fabulous, fabulous lists of fireproof plants that do really well here in Orange County, but they all have some of the characteristics that are the same. One of the things that's great about the fire escape plants is that they can withstand drought. Once they're established, they use relatively little water, and that's why you're hydrozoning your plants around your complex. When you first plant any plant, fire escape or not, you need to water the plants. A plant is not truly established and truly drought tolerant until it's been in the ground anywhere from about 9 to 18 months, depending on the plant. So initially, you're going to need to water more. But as your plants grow in and as they get bigger, they'll become more and more drought tolerant, and then you'll be able to back off on your water. Some other characteristics are they grow close to the ground. They have a low sap or resin content. So like a good example of a tree that's full of resin and sap are like your pine trees. Anything that's sticky. They grow without accumulating a lot of dead branches. Their leaves store water. They have an extensive root system, and they have very moist leaves. A lot of your fire escape plants actually store water in their leaves. And one thing that's really cool is that if there is a fire and the plant gets burned to the ground, they have the ability to regrow. About 2 years ago, or no, longer than that, time flies, maybe, I don't know, 4 years ago, we had what was called the Canyon Fire 2. And the Canyon Fire 2 came up to where my garden is, and parts of it actually jumped into the garden. And not a lot of it, but enough that I had 2 or 3 planter beds just burned to the ground. So I thought to myself, as an experiment, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to, clean this area up and wait and see what happens. I had a toyon in there, which is a really great California native plant. I had a ceanothus in there, which is also a great native plant. And I had some deer grass, which is also a great native plant, if irrigated. And all 3 of those grew back. And what's funny is they look better now than they did before. So it's just funny how things are. But a lot of these plants will regrow on their own. Okay, so here is a great list of plants, maybe a bit small for you to see, but this is from the Orange County Fire. And it's a great list of plants. What's great about it is everything in here just thrives in Orange County. If you would like assistance going through this list, you can email me and I'll talk to you a little bit about where your HOA is located. And I can give you some tips on which of these plants would most likely do well in your specific microclimate. As an HOA, what you need to do is you need to go through here, and you could have a community meeting, you could have a board meeting, however you want to do it. And you're going to want to pick out a palette of plants that you really like. I would say your palette of plants probably needs to have anywhere from maybe 12 to 18 different shrubs and ground covers. And then you need to pick out at least 3 to 5 trees that you really like. And have that list, and as your landscape is replaced, and as your landscape dies, and you need to replace a tree, slowly what you're going to do is you're going to replace with these plants that are on this list. And again, like I said, I'm available to help you go through this list. I know there's a lot of plants on here. Okay, and this is the list that I had mentioned before that is so great. This is from Orange County Fire Authority, and there must be I don't know, close to 150 plants on this list. What's really nice is there's a key on here that tells you what type of plant you're choosing. Native plants are called out. There's also some regulations on certain plants that can only be planted on hillsides, or certain plants that need to be maintained with a certain height. Everything you need to know is on this list, and it's very, very, very helpful. Okay, so let me tell you about the benefits of planting fire escape plants. One of the things, fire escape plants are so environmentally friendly. Everything about them is something that you will benefit from. First of all, fire escape plants take less maintenance than your traditional plants, which means you can reduce the amount of time that your landscape crew is mowing and blowing throughout your complex. As we know, all these mowers emit everything's terrible for the air on these small motor engines. And your community probably doesn't like to listen to them. The other thing you can reduce is you can reduce your use of pesticides. Fire escape plants in general do not require pesticides or fertilizers. So not only is that great for your community, but it keeps our waterways clean. It reduces pollution. It's just a great thing. Again, I have a picture here of a rotary head sprinkler. All of the new sprinklers now that are water efficient use a lot less water, and the water comes out in a different pattern. It's slower, and it comes out in a stream, allowing the water to soak in. Again, you can get a rebate for those. And again, you're not having to fertilize your lawn, because hopefully you are going to be taking your lawn, or at least part of your grass, out. You can get a fabulous rebate right now. Most water districts are offering a turf removal rebate, and you can take out sections of your lawn. You don't have to do it all at once. Maybe pick 2 or 3 spots in your HOA that are used the most by residents that you want to do as a showcase. take out the lawn, put in some fire escape plants, let them grow into fruition, let your residents see how nice it is, and then you can slowly tackle the rest of your complex. But again, it's a cycle where fertilizer goes on your grass. The fertilizer is not absorbed completely. Only about 70% is absorbed. The other 30% goes right off into our waterways. So fire escaping is really beneficial for the environment as well as for your community. So when you do this, again, you've got to get the buy-in of your residents. If I was redoing my area, my HOA, I would make a really neat brochure flyer, distribute it to everybody, and then the areas that I'm redoing as fire escape areas, I would have some signage. And my signage would say, you know, not only are we beautiful, not only do we attract butterflies, but we're keeping our community safe. And you put that sign out, and when your residents walk by and they see the new landscaping, it'll click what you're doing. If you just plop these plants in and don't communicate to your residents, the first thing they're going to think is the plants are ugly. And of course they're ugly. They've just been planted. They're these little tiny, scrawny little things, and they're all going to say it's too sparse, there's no color, they don't look good. And that's because they have to wait until they grow in. You can't judge a landscape right when you first plant it. So get your signage out there, and you can order all these signs online. You can say native plant. I love this one from Calscape. Native plants live here. You know, put a sign out so your residents know what's going on. Okay, ground covers. There are so many awesome ground covers. When people mention ground covers, they think of the ice plant that Caltrans used to plant in the 80s and the 90s. That is no more. All of the landscapes now are done with fabulous ground covers. These are two of my favorites. One is a manzanita, which grows low to the ground, and the other one is called Ice Plant Fire Spinner, which is just a year-round knockout. I love both of these. The manzanita is native, the fire spinner is not. And here's some examples of fire-resistant plants. There are so many choices. You can really pick a palette that has all kinds of color and that will make your complex just beautiful. And again, they take no fertilizer, and all of these plants will attract butterflies, hummingbirds, birds, all kinds of neat creatures to your complex. This is a planter. I took this picture myself. I think that I was down somewhere in South Orange County, and I really liked this because you can see all the fire escape plants, but you can see that they're low, and you can also see that there's some space between the plants. That's really important. California natives. I cannot tell you how great California natives are. There's a local nursery here. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called Tree of Life. If you go to their website, they have fabulous resources. They have all these lists of really great plants that do well in HOA. And so I'd highly suggest that you go there. When you're ready to plant your plants, you can call and order the plants ahead of time and make sure they have them in stock. They're really good about that. Again, here's more pictures of natives. You got ceanothus, you have manzanita. All of these are easy. They're all drought tolerant. They're just beautiful plants. Succulents. Succulents are great plants. I would highly recommend that you incorporate some into your landscape. You probably do not want to incorporate anything that's a cacti, but I would recommend the succulents. I wanted to show you a picture here of a hillside. Basically what happens is that the succulents melt. So this is a picture of melted succulents. What's amazing though is most likely they regrow. You just cut them off and the plant itself grows right back. It's really nice. Again, here's what the plant looks like before it burns. Here's the plant after it's burned. They're very resilient. And again, here's succulents. I just want people to get away from the fact that fire escape plants don't have color. And you do not need to plant any cactus. You can stay away from the cactus. Okay, trees. Like I said, for your HOA, you're going to want to pick 3 to 5 trees that you're going to use to replace your trees as your trees in your community age. A lot of trees have a lifespan of between 30 and 50 years. And as your community ages, you are going to want to have that list ready to go. And slowly what you're going to do is you're going to replace your trees with these fire escape trees. And these are two of my favorites here. The fire escape lists in the resources has lots, but this is a manzanita and a crepe myrtle. You see the crepe myrtle everywhere now. It's gotten to be like the generic tree, but there's a reason for it. It's drought tolerant, it's fireproof, it requires very little pruning, so there is a reason why you see it everywhere. And it comes in a lot of colors too. I love the manzanita because of the bark. It's just beautiful. Another one of my favorites is the desert Palo Verde. And you see that everywhere now, but it's a really great choice. Gives you a lot of color. And a strawberry tree is another great choice. I have a strawberry tree at the Coast Keeper Garden, and I just love it. It's really easy to grow, and it looks good all year long. Okay, a couple others of my favorites. Pineapple guava. It comes in a tree and a shrub. And if you're lucky, you actually get fruit you can eat. This past year at the garden, I actually got some guavas. And euphorbias are great. They're actually a succulent. You would never know it to look at them, but they're a really great landscaping plant, and they're definitely fireproof. Okay, what not to plant. I don't think your HOA is currently going to be planting any of these plants, but I just wanted to show you a few examples that if you do have these plants, you can put them on your list to slowly remove them. Your traditional fan palm tree, of course, those were popular. I don't think anyone's planting those now. And also pampas grass. That was really popular about 20 years ago, but it's just really, really, really flammable. Okay, and again, I talked about transition. Don't feel overwhelmed. You may have a whole HOA full of juniper and cypress. Just maintain it, prune it, and slowly as your budget allows, you can replace it with fire escape plants. This, it's just, I think a lot of times why HOAs don't start these projects is they feel overwhelmed. It's just too big of a project and they don't know where to start. Just start by slowly replacing your plants and by pruning everything, and slowly work your way into it. Don't feel so overwhelmed that you do nothing. Okay, I live in a planned community, and my planned community is full of eucalyptus and pine trees. That is the only tree in my community. My community is 30 years old. Finally, we have a replacement list, and on our replacement list is the strawberry tree and the ceanothus, and they're just starting to put them in. I am so happy. So these are the plants that you want to slowly eliminate, but until you eliminate them, keep them pruned. Okay, spacing. Again, vertical spacing is really, really, really important. You need to have that space in between trees, and you need to have 6 feet. If you see the middle picture there, that's called fuel. It's called a ladder fuel, and you can see how the flames jump from a small shrub into a bigger shrub, into a tree. Having them close, you have that ladder fuel. So you want to eliminate that. And again, if you live on a hillside, you need more space between your trees. So the more of an incline you're on, the more of a space you need. And again, this is a picture, this isn't necessarily the perfect picture, but what I wanted to show is that you do need some fuel breaks. So again, like I talked about, putting that decomposed granite pathway in, or having an area, you want to have an area near your buildings that's not planted and that doesn't have trees. And most likely that's going to be within 5 feet of your building. Okay, mulch. You can still mulch. You have to mulch. Everyone says, isn't mulch going to go up in flames? If you keep your plants irrigated and you buy correct mulch, you should be fine. Get some mulch that is medium sized. You see on here where we have medium pine, that's medium pine bark. That's what you want to use. Don't get the really tiny, tiny ground up gorilla mulch, and certainly you're not going to want to leave pine needles as your mulch. So you still need to mulch. If you don't mulch, your plants aren't going to thrive. Mulch is what keeps moisture in the soil, and helps conserve water, and it's like a vitamin for your soil, and it keeps the plants healthy. So you're going to want to mulch, but you don't need to put mulch close to your home. Make sure your mulch is at least 5 feet out from your home. And again, this is that quote that I have in here twice. If there's any defense against a fire, it's maintenance of your plants. It's not necessarily the plants you choose. It's so important that you maintain your plants. You need to work with your landscape crew, and you need to have this in your contract that they are going to do pruning. And you need to make sure that they know what they're doing. So many landscape crews come out and they basically scalp your trees. They just cut the trees down to nothing. And what that does is that forces the tree to grow back faster than ever. When your landscape crew comes in and prunes and thins out your trees, you'll notice the difference. But somebody coming into your complex and looking at the tree isn't going to immediately say, oh, that tree was just pruned. Whereas when these other crews come in, they just scalp the trees, and it looks like the tree got a haircut. That's the worst thing you can do. So make sure that when you are pruning, that you're hiring a company that actually knows what they're doing. And what I have done in the past, if you hire a company, have them come in and say, okay, we want you to prune these 3 trees. Have them prune the 3 trees, and then they stop. And then you come and take a look and see if you like it. If they're great and they're pruned correctly, then have them continue. If they've done a terrible job, then you say, thank you for your time, but we're moving on to the next pruner. So don't just hire somebody, go into your house, and don't come outside, and then you walk back out the next day and every tree's had a haircut. You need to be out there monitoring your crew. Okay, and this is the other thing. Make sure your landscape crew is picking up dead branches. Most landscape crews are not trained to pick up dead debris every single time they come. So you need to make sure that all that dead debris is being picked up, because what you don't want to do is have a pile of dead debris. One little ember can smolder in that dead debris, and that's what most fires are ignited from, are smoldering embers in dry brush. Okay, now resources. I cannot tell you how many great resources there are now for firescaping. Again, this is my email. I love to answer questions. Email me and I'll either call you or we can chat back and forth on email, but I'd be glad to answer questions. I will host your HOA group at my garden so you can actually see the plants. Orange County Fire Authority is really good. Again, this National Fire Protection Association is where you can get free brochures to hand out to your residents. CAL FIRE is great. University of California has a whole firescaping section. And this last resource here is actually a newer resource that just went online, and they have a fabulous resource section. So between these sites, you will have more information than you will ever need. So, and again, I'm available to answer questions, and I hope today that some of your questions were answered. So thank you again, and happy firescaping.
Thank you, Marianne. We are so pleased to have you share your expertise with us and appreciate your offer to connect with you further. As a reminder, all our speakers today are available for your questions, even after this event is over. We also encourage you to call or email your local city or water district so we can discuss your specific needs. On behalf of our event partners, I also want to thank all of our presenters and everyone who is here watching today. We hope you enjoy the presentations. I know I certainly have learned a lot. All our presentations will be available to view online, and we will email them to all the registered attendees. Also included in that email, keep an eye out for a survey. For anyone who completes a survey, you will be entered into an opportunity drawing to receive a gift that was kindly donated by our sponsors. Our event sponsors include Harvest Landscape, Toro, Tree of Life Nursery, BK Cellars, and Ratio. Most importantly, we really want to hear from you, want your feedback, and encourage continued dialogue. That concludes our program for today, but we look forward to continuing the conversation and connecting with you.
Thanks.